you need to click on me to put me on the stage. Right now I'm in the back of the studio. You need to press on me and want to get me up right in front of the studio.
Okie doke. Just went live. Hello, everybody. Live from Jerusalem is Josh Wander with his mask. And live from Ramat Beit Shemesh is me, Yehuda Shamroth of the Miriam Project, and Josh of the Israel Torah.org and the Bring Them Home Geula Project and Aliyah Project. We're working in a collaborative way to bring Rabbi Winston to you every Thursday night. He'll be with us soon. Here we are on Yom Yerushalayim, a very important day in the life of the Jewish people, when the '67 war was won, and we were able to obtain our own country, our own city of Jerusalem back. Normally we have celebrations of kids dancing in the streets. We don't have that now because of Corona, but we have Josh live from Jerusalem, which he will tell us what he's doing there, and there's a lot of tefillah, and he'll explain that now.
Hopefully you can hear me. Yehuda, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, so I'm here at a very, very unique location, which is on the top of the Mount of Olives of Har Zeitim. And this is a very special, it's one of 5 thriving Jewish communities today on the mountain. And I'm here, this is the best overlook, the best view of the Temple Mount that you can get anywhere in the world. And we're standing here, we're gonna bring that to you, I'm gonna flip the camera, I'm gonna bring that to you. It is an awesome view of the Temple Mount, something that I think it is the first time in 53 years, perhaps the first time that there has not been any, very few Jews that are on the other side of the Dakota. Usually there are tens of thousands that are at on Yom Yerushalayim, on Jerusalem Day there. And usually on Ramadan, there are likewise Muslims that are crowding the Mount, the Temple Mount. None of that is around today. There are a few hundred Jews on by the Temple, by the Western Wall. There are unfortunately no Jews or Muslims for that matter right now on the Temple Mount. So I'm gonna flip the camera around for you. I can't see Yehuda's face. I don't know what happened to her. Hopefully she'll be back with us soon. But I'm going to flip the camera around for you to see this amazing view. And here we are. Here we are looking at Jerusalem. I'm going to move over a little bit so you can see the whole view. This is the view of Jerusalem, of the Temple Mount, looking from the east towards Jerusalem. Now, this is not only an amazing view, this is not just an amazing view, but this is the view that General Matagur 53 days ago was looking at when he was commanding the troops, the paratroopers, to go and to liberate Jerusalem for the first time in 2,000 years to the Jewish people. So this is very, very unbelievable view. This is you're looking right now at the eastern wall with Shah HaRachamim. To the right, you have the Lion's Gate, Shah HaRayot. This is the view of the Temple Mount where the paratroopers entered 53 years ago screaming, Ha Habayit Biyadenu, Ha Habayit Biyadenu, that the Temple Mount is in our hands, the Temple Mount is in our hands. 53 years later, we are still here. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jews are alive and well. Even if there's Corona, even if there's some challenges, we're still here, and we will not forget Jerusalem. Unfortunately, for 53 years, the flip side of that is that we are still praying at the retaining wall of the Temple Mount called the Western Wall, but we are not on the Temple Mount as we should be. That's the significance of the Western Wall, of course, is its proximity to what's behind it, and that's what you're looking at now. You're looking at the place of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, the place of the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim. And we are so fortunate to be here today. We're looking at a view that for thousands of years, Jews around the world dreamed of seeing. They went 3 times a day when they prayed, when they davened towards Yerushalayim, and they imagined that one day they would be able to see this view. And we are so fortunate, and we give thanks today, especially today on Yom Yerushalayim, that Hashem has allowed us to live in a generation where we can see this. We're not at the end of the redemptive process yet, but we're almost there. And we're so fortunate to be alive in these very special times. I think that Rabbi Winston entered the studio, if I'm not mistaken. Yehudis?
No, I haven't seen him yet. I don't see him yet. So
I just heard a beep, so I thought that somebody entered.
No, that was, I turned my camera off while you were speaking. Okay. And
you should leave it on, but it's better to leave the camera on the whole time. But
yeah, I'm
that's
leaving it
fine.
on now.
He should be
Leaving it
here
on
any
now.
minute.
Yeah. So before Rabbi Winston comes, I just want to make mention of the fact that both Josh and I feel very passionate about the fact that Jews should be making Aliyah right now. There's no excuses anymore for many years now. I think my husband actually had to bring me kicking and screaming. I didn't know my neshama belonged here. I came in 2001, actually a month before 9/11. When a lot of other people made decisions to come. But don't wait for a 9/11 and don't wait for another Corona. We want you here now, and you can walk in the door like never before. And like Josh said, there's nothing holding you back now. Our ancestors would have given anything to come here, anything to see that view, anything to see that flag flying behind him. It's so beautiful. It brings you to tears to see that. So just if there's any way you want help, you can contact Josh Wander on Facebook or jwander@gmail.com, or you can contact Yehuda Shamroth. I have a project called the Miriam Project. We discuss Aliyah. We discuss the Geula on SoundCloud.com, the Miriam Project Geula Hour. And Rabbi Winston is ready to enter the studio. I'm going to click him in, and I'm going to say, welcome, Rabbi Winston, on Yom Yerushalayim, and also on the 42nd day of the Omer, which is what is it, Malchut? Malchut Shabbat Yasod. So you might want to talk about that, and maybe you don't. I don't know, but this is
tonight's already the 43rd, so actually it's
oh, sorry, the 43rd. I'm a day late. I haven't counted yet. Rabbi Winston, as you all probably know, was born in Toronto, Canada. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm sure you all heard that noise. He came to Israel many years ago. He runs a website called 36.org, where he discusses and writes prolifically. I don't think this man ever sleeps. He's constantly writing about the Geula. He's writing about the end of days. He's writing about the Torah. He's writing about Avram Avinu and how it applies to us today. You really need to go visit his website, 36, one word spelled out, or the whole number spelled out, 36.org, and buy his webinars and his projects and his and reading his Torah perceptions every week. I get it in the mailbox. I can't let a Shabbos go by for many, many years now without reading Rabbi Winston at my table. It always is very relevant. And he lives in Telstone right now. And Rabbi Winston, I don't want to hold you up. Tonight, you're going to be talking about conspiracies. So I'm going to, without further ado, Rabbi Winston's got something to say about that. And I'm going to turn my camera off, Josh, because I want people just to see Rabbi Winston. Okay?
Although the view is beautiful too.
That's the Temple Mount. That's a view of Josh. You just missed Josh's explanation. He'll give it to you, I'm sure. Okay, go ahead, Rabbi.
Okay. Obviously, it's a controversial topic, the idea of conspiracy. I just when I was working on these notes to prepare it, one of the reasons why I did this was because there was a lot of this flying around, especially to do with the virus and the governments and everything. It's always in the background somewhere. But when there's a crisis like this, so it becomes more pronounced, and things get passed around, videos, and it's a lot of people absorb it, they eat it up, and it becomes their mentality.
I don't know if you can hear me, but Rabbi Winston is muted, it seems, from my side. So maybe Yehuda, just make sure that he's unmuted. And meanwhile, as you can take your picture, you can put yourself back outside of the studio. Let's make sure we can hear Rabbi Winston. His audio is working, because I don't hear any audio from Rabbi Winston.
Okay. Did anything just say like nothing get hurt? Does anybody read lips?
Josh, I can hear the Rabbi fine.
Okay, so maybe it's just me. I apologize. For the interruption.
I think
you could take us both.
This is obviously
out of the studio, or you could just press on his picture of this little circle on the top left of his picture, and that'll make him the entire screen.
Can I pick up? Okay, just continuing on, but basically that the other day when I was actually preparing these notes, and I looked up, I wanted to get some background on the mentality of a conspiracy theorist, or actually no, more the mentality of a conspirator. What is the way of thinking of people who actually do conspiracies? Is there a psychological reality? Are we all guilty of the same ideas, specific personality type? So I just want to get some general information on that. I have my own ideas, my own perception of the situation, but I want to see what professionals had said speaking about this. And ironically, when I did this, I typed it in, mentality of conspirator, and instead I got a whole list from Google of conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists. So I thought, okay, maybe I didn't put in the right parameters, so I did it again very specifically. And again, the same thing came up. I couldn't get the mentality of a conspirator, so to speak. And when I looked at the links that they did provide me with, one after the other, basically bashing the whole concept of conspiracy theorists, and how they all have mental issues and satisfying some type of internal insecurity. Nothing really favorable or positive, or even talking about the reality of the concept of conspiracy. And the reality is, first, this conspiracy has a very negative connotation. The Latin origin of the word conspiracy just means that people plot together, whether for good or for bad. It doesn't have to necessarily have a negative connotation, but one of the reasons why the word conspiracy has a negative connotation is because most conspiracies carried out throughout history, and they have been carried out going back to the very beginning of time, have been negative, have had negative results, have happened for the wrong reasons. And we can go back to the very first murder, which took place very shortly after the Jewish people. It's not the Jewish people. That's Mitzrayim. After man was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, they left paradise because of eating from the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They went out, and a very short time after that, that's when Cain killed his brother Hevel or Abel, and he conspired. Now, the truth is, conspiracy apparently implies more than one person. So you might say it's not really conspiracy, it's a plot. It wasn't really conspiracy. The fact that Cain hid his intentions, the fact that he planned to kill his brother and murder his brother and made out as if that's not what he was going to do so he could surprise him, it's just a bad plot, not a conspiracy, because conspiracy means you have to conspire with somebody else. Between these two people, if not more, for some evil scheme. So, but you could actually say, the Yetzer Hara is really the co-conspirator, especially when it comes to Cain. God warns him. God actually says to Cain that sin sits at your doorstep. I can see what you're planning to do. I know what's on your mind. And if you conquer the Yetzer Hara, then you will win. You'll prevail. You come out ahead. But if you don't, then you're going to be a sitting duck. And of course, as history records, that Cain lost the battle with his Yetzer Hara and conspired with it, so to speak, against Hevel, his brother, and he murdered him. But the truth is, that's not the first conspiracy. The first conspiracy goes all the way back into the Garden of Eden. We don't think about it in those terms, but that's what it was. The snake, when it comes to Chava, is a conspirator. He knows the score. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly what he plans to do. He knows who God is. He knows the truth about the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that touching it doesn't kill you, but eating it does kill you. He knows all that, and still he tries to convince Chava that it's for her own good, and he is he's out for her good, because that's what conspiracies often do. They try to convince you that what they're doing is for your good, but really it's for your bad. And of course, they found out the truth after, but it began back then. And again, you could say the snake worked alone, but he didn't, because it turns out that once the Sitra Achra, the Satan, the angel, the accusing angel, came down and actually worked together with the snake to tempt Chava and cause her to eat. So conspiracies have a very long history going back to the beginning of time. And for a very simple reason, and that's because we have a Yetzer Hara. In the beginning, we didn't have it inside of us, but we certainly had it in the Garden of Eden with us in the form of the snake. And as long as there's a Yetzer Hara and a person is not aware of it, or a person is not battling against it, then they're prone to conspire against others. But this seems to be what history is all about. All from beginning until end. There's plot after plot after plot after plot, conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy. It's just going on the entire time. Rome was famous for its conspiracies. You became emperor, and all you did, you just lived with paranoia and fear the entire time that people in the Senate or somebody else was conspiring against you to kill you and take over your position. The most famous one, of course, is the story of Julius Caesar, where they conspired to get rid of him. And that's what Rome was. Rome was just one big, huge, ongoing conspiracy. The actors may have changed, but the plots were pretty much the same the entire way through. And until mankind became more civilized, these conspiracies they weren't so civilized. And this is what's going on the entire time. So the fact that people downplay the concept of conspiracy theory, it's hard not to be a conspiracy theorist, because this world is filled with lots of people who are power hungry and who have the character traits, the ability to pull off such a thing. I mean, one of the most dangerous aspects of being naive, or being not even naive, just being nice. One of the reasons why the Jewish people could not get their head around the fact that the Germans, the Nazis, had planned to go way beyond Kristallnacht. That was just the beginning of their plan. They had, Mein Kampf had been written. You could see what Hitler wanted to do. They just didn't believe it could be done, or that people would work with him, or that others in the world around them would allow him to carry it out, because they would never do that to somebody else. The Jews would never, one Jew to another Jew, or even just to a Gentile. There was blood libels, and they're liable because we don't do stuff like that. The Jews have a certain ethic, and even secular Jews who don't live by Torah strongly feel about things like this. We do have our enemies. We have had Jews who have been capable of carrying out some of the worst things of all that we can possibly imagine. But for the most part, the Jewish population assumed that since we would never do that to somebody else, we would never conspire like that against somebody else, so then they wouldn't conspire against us either to do those things. And of course, we found out differently. And the same thing is true of the rest of the world today. Most people living today would never do to other people what a lot of the conspiracy theorists say is actually being done and carried out by people in power. I mean, just read the news, the headlines today, what's going on behind, up front, behind the scenes. We just take it in stride. That's the news. But it's all conspiracies to a large degree. So that's, for the most part, has been world history. One conspiracy after another. And though many of them don't play out, many of them don't succeed, and many of them might just be theory and nothing more than that, but there's been enough of them throughout the course of history that that to sanction, to warrant a person being concerned about such things, especially if they see things going on that could easily be nefarious and affect them in a very damaging way. So just as a working definition of the idea of conspiracy is taken right out of the dictionary, a conspiracy is a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. It has to be secret. That's a precondition. Otherwise, it's not a conspiracy. It's out in the open, right? It has to involve at least two people because they conspire together. Otherwise, again, as I mentioned before, it's just a plot. And the goal has to be something unlawful or harmful. That's not entirely true. That's the way, especially as I mentioned before, the Latin root doesn't really necessarily say that specifically. That's just what we're used to. But the truth is that there's good conspiracies too. There are conspiracies that where governments or people or rabbanim or just individuals in family relationships, for example, may not tell everybody what they're doing because they know that those people don't understand what's best for them. And this is good. And if you tell them the truth, they're going to respond negatively, and that's not good for them. Forget about for me, but it's not good for them. So therefore, people are constantly conspiring for the benefit of others, but just not as much as those conspire against the benefit of others. So it's just the fact that people working together to conspire. Secondly, that's the definition. So you find in the world, and you have to wait till the end. This is one of those movies where you have to stay to the end because the end is the most important part. And I even consider beginning with it because of the fact that it's such an important thing. Because everything I'm telling you right now is in general terms. But we're working towards the Torah approach to all of this. Regardless of whether the conspiracy is true or not, there's a certain Torah approach and responsible approach that we're supposed to take. And it's important to know this, especially at times such as these, when we have conspiracy theories flying around and a lot of information and evidence, so to speak, to support the possibility of these things being true. There's a distinction between the Torah approach and the world's approach. So moving on, okay? So a lot of people have difficulty with the idea of conspiracies, and the larger they are, or more evil they are, the more this is true. You basically find that the world is divided between two types of people when it comes to conspiracies: those who believe in them and those who don't want to believe in them. Not that they know for sure they don't exist, not that they don't, they can prove there's no such thing as a conspiracy, because that's for sure not the case. I mean, it's going on all the time. That's what's in the news for the most part these days. And they just don't want it, they just don't want to. When I was watching a documentary to do with 9/11, it was actually put together by some professional chemists and architects and engineers to do with the Twin Towers coming down, and they weren't interested in saying why it happened the way it happened, or what plan there was behind it, or who might be behind it. They just wanted to look at the evidence and the material and how it took place, and to see what the truth of the reality may possibly be. And the evidence that they had supported what many had said, that it was really basically impossible for an airplane to bring the Twin Towers down at the speed of gravity, that they should pancake one after the other. And this is a personal anecdote, that I was in architecture school many years ago, and we were on a field trip to New York. We went to Chicago, New York, and one of one part of that field trip was we were taken as a group to the roof of the Twin Towers by the curator of the buildings, who had a tremendous amount of architectural knowledge about the buildings, and it was explained to us as architecture students how the building was constructed and built, and he emphasized over and over again, when I saw the pictures of the towers being hit and coming down, I just recalled this statement that he made, and he emphasized how the core of the building was constructed in such a way that planes could not take it down. No matter how hot it got, and it didn't get that hot anyhow. But it was built because of I believe the Empire State Building was hit by a plane once, and high buildings can be hit by planes, and they were worried about terrorist attacks too, because they had information that this might happen one day in the future. And he said it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen because of the way they're built. So it didn't make sense, even for the average building to pancake like that. Anyhow, so they report their findings, and they said that the government report about how the towers came down did not satisfy the evidence that was found. Whatever that means. They weren't coming to conclusions about that. That wasn't their point. That was the only point they were making. And one of I believe she was a chemist, spoke about how she called up one of her siblings and said, you should know, we've done this report and we've said this thing, when we come to this conclusion, it doesn't make sense what the government has said as the reason for why the Twin Towers came down the way they did. And the response of the sibling was, I don't want to know about it. I don't care what you found. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. Now, she was telling her sibling because it's important to know these things. This is part of the truth. Make a difference. Because if I have to listen to things like that and believe in things like that, I'm going to live with paranoia, to worry the entire time that someone's conspiring against me to do damage to me. I mean, the implications are unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I don't want to know from things like that. So better, I just stay out of the picture. Whatever they do behind the scenes, that's their business, as long as it doesn't personally affect me. If it personally affects me, then it's a different story. So you've got people who have no problem believing in the idea of conspiracies. They might be insecure, they might have paranoia, they might have facts, might have information. They might know, there's lots of people like that who have inside information to support things like this. And then there's the people who I just don't want to know from things like that, because it just upsets my world. And therefore, I'm going to ignore it until it has to become a reality. And that's why, for example, the world wars became what they became. In the end, of course, it's divine providence. And God takes advantage of our attitudes to do what he wants to do, to execute history as he plans to do it. But on a more superficial level, that one of the reasons why we find ourselves so often in situations that we have to go back and repair and try and fix up and undo the damage or damage control is because when the information was there, we didn't take it seriously. And that's a point to consider. But that's basically the way the world kind of divides, right? And you have to decide, where you belong to some degree. But again, the conclusion will deal with this particular reality, because the truth is that there's a third approach, and that's the Torah approach. The first two approaches I mentioned up until now, just for the average everyday individual, the ones either believe, the ones who don't want to believe, but then there's a third approach, and that's the Torah approach, which we'll get to, God willing, towards the end of this hour. So what is the mentality of the conspirator? So again, it depends, what type of conspiracy we're talking about. One of the greatest conspirators of all time is God. He's a great conspirator. He's always planning stuff. He's always doing things behind our back. He always, but the fundamental difference is that when God conspires against mankind, it's for mankind's own good. It's not because God is selfish or arrogant, God forbid, in any way. He only wants what's best for mankind. He only wants what's best for history and to fulfill his agenda for history. But his agenda is all good. So God falls into the category of one of those good conspirators in the ultimate sense of the term. But the average conspirator that we're talking about, for the most part, you'll find, if you look at it, that they are people with an agenda that they tend to feel very strongly about, enough to deceive others to implement it. If they are concerned that being transparent will interfere with their planned success, they will turn to subterfuge. Either they will work through backdoor means and hide the results, or convince others that what is damaging to them, to the others, is actually to their benefit. That's where a lot of this, is coming today. I don't want to, go into details, but, vaccines, are they good for us? And they're not good for us. Are they really the lesser two evils, or are they the evil? Are people trying to control populations because it's a world filled with 8 billion people? And as we saw from the Arab uprising, the Arab Spring, and other examples throughout history, governments are constantly concerned about what happens if a population decides to rebel against the system. In the West, it doesn't happen so often, but it might very soon. You can see the divisions taking place. And it's not just a simple thing. You're not going to nuke everybody, so to speak, because that doesn't really solve too much of the problem. And second of all, it's not a simple thing just to send the army in. There's also divided loyalties, and civil war is a very, very painful and difficult process. It doesn't always answer all the questions the way they need to be answered. So, there's a lot of supporting evidence, but again, these subterfuge, meaning that the people have to hide what they're doing, and if they can't accomplish through backdoor means, which is part of what's going on right now in the news, they will tend to try to convince the population that what we're doing with you to you is for the good, or businesses work the same way as well. How many times have drugs been recalled because they turned out to be dangerous, even kill people in over a period of time, or just the way things are marketed for people to give you the impression that this is what you want, this is the best thing you should have, it's good for you, it's healthy for you, when in fact it's not true. I mean, even just the food that we eat is a perfect case in point. I mean, there was once an article about the health of Americans and how obesity was such a problem, and they showed the picture of a bus shelter from the side with an ad for a pizza shop. And of course, it was a piece of pizza being taken out from the pan with cheese, just connected to the piece, because there's so much cheese on this thing. And anybody, standing at the bus stop or just looking at the ad, I personally felt like having a piece of pizza when I saw this ad, and a nice deep dish pizza, piece of pizza with lots of cheese. And people standing there might go home and order it with a suggestion. But the article said, is it any wonder why people were obese? And then the beer, when the coronavirus began, they showed people preparing for lockdown, coming out of beer stores and liquor stores with boxes and crates loaded one on top of the other, and cigarettes, and you name it. And it's passed off as this is a life experience. And all it is someone's way to become very wealthy at the expense and the health of other people. That's not a conspiracy? Sure, it's a conspiracy. It's one that we kind of know about somewhat. The Surgeon General puts on the side of the box this can kill you, or you should not drink this while you are pregnant. And there are certain warnings, but just like the coronavirus, people walking around with a mask right now because you read it, but you don't really believe it so much. So you kind of, but not completely, but it's all part of this conspiracy, because if society was truly concerned about the health of its citizens, and the people who were selling were truly concerned about the welfare of their customers, probably everything would be a health food store. And they would sell things like, healthy hamburgers and things like that. But that's society. Society, for the most part, runs because people buy things and people sell things. And it particularly takes advantage of the Yetzer Hara. It's the exact same thing that what happened to Chava back in the Garden of Eden. And ever since, is that these things are not talking to your health. They're not talking to your Yetzer Tov, your good inclination. They're talking to your Yetzer Hara. That talks to me. I see this ad for a vacation, I want to take it. I see this delicious food, I want to buy it. I don't even ask, what the calories are necessarily until it's too late. Until the doctor says the person is pre-diabetes or diabetes, or they're unhealthy, or get a heart attack. And then we might ask all the important questions. And people are sitting in high-rise, office buildings on the top floor with penthouse views, making billions of dollars off our Yetzer Hara, convincing us it's not so bad, it's okay. Or the movie industry, you name it, one after the other. And that's just the beginning of it. If people really understood what was going on in the minds of the people producing all this and selling to us, they'd be shocked, because they would never do that themselves to other people. They're too nice. They're too mild-mannered. But there are people out there who have a certain profile. They have agendas. More than likely, they're arrogant. They don't think so highly of other people. And they're selfish and perhaps greedy. As it's been said very often, greed drives the business world. And you have to have it, because without that, the people aren't going to want to pursue their goals and keep the economy rolling and moving on. But nonetheless, there are conspiracies taking place the entire time. So if the conspirator is working in the best interests of those people they are conspiring against, we don't mind. That's okay. No problem with that. That's a good thing. And honestly, we want it to a large degree, because we don't have the time to do all the research and get all the proper conclusions and know what's good for us. We would like to believe that we vote people into office, or we appoint people to be our leaders, that they will do the research, have the knowledge, are smart enough, are wise enough, because knowledge is only half the story, or even just 1/3 of it. Wisdom is what you need. Then that's great. And that's what we appoint these people, so we can go about our daily lives without worrying about all these issues. But if the conspiracy is selfish, it's for people's own agendas, then they tend to demean other people. These are the things that are the most dangerous of all and undermine society. The Tower of Babel was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy. They used fear to push people to get involved in the project. Some said that Shemayim, heaven, breaks open every 1,656 years. There's going to be another flood. You don't help us build this tower, you're going to drown. You'll be the next ones to drown. That was Noah's generation. And our generation will be next year. Your children, great-grandchildren. In those days, people lived hundreds of years. So, people got involved for one reason or another. One of the most famous conspiracies, perhaps, in Jewish history actually ended up being a fast day right after Rosh Hashanah. He was actually killed on Rosh Hashanah, but we don't fast on Rosh Hashanah, so we push it off to the 3rd of Tishrei. Gedaliah ben Achikam. What was the story behind him? Nebuchadnezzar had already destroyed the base of Mikdash. Israel had become a vassal state, but he was prepared to leave a remnant of the Jewish people behind, and he appointed Gedaliah as a governor over these people. And he was a tzaddik. He was a righteous person. He was a little bit too righteous in the end, because the one of the kings of the north was jealous, and he sent down Yishmael, forget his name, Ben whatever, right? Actually, I have it here. One second. Let me just find it. somewhere. His name was Yishmael ben Netanya, right? And it was the king. It was the king of Ammon at that time, who hired or appointed Yishmael ben Netanya to go down and assassinate Gedaliah, so he could take over the vines and the land, whatever was there that they were enjoying, and he wanted to take over all of that. Even though Babylonia was really the one who had conquered Eretz Israel at that time. So Yishmael had gone down, but Gedaliah had been informed and warned that this Yishmael guy is coming down for no good. He's gonna murder you in the end. And Gedaliah ben Chikim said, "That's just slander. That's just plain lashon hara, and I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to pretend I never even heard it in the end." And we have a concept. It's a very important concept when it comes to life in general, especially with people you're not sure about. Kabdeu v'chashdehu. Kabdeu v'chashdehu literally means honor them, but suspect them. It means it's like gotta find a balance. You can't just throw them out like he didn't want to do either. You have to take him in. He brought him in. He brought him to his table. He fulfilled the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim, taking care of guests, treated them nicely, royally, but you have to be. It was a chashash here. We choshed him. You have to suspect. Keep one eye open or one eye out to see if anything that looks out of place is taking place, and be careful. Maybe have armed guards around you. Have people watch him, so you don't have to watch him. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to act as if everything was okay. And of course, he was assassinated instead. He was killed. And not only did they assassinate him, but they also killed all these Babylonians that were with him as well. Whatever Jews had remained with him. And the rest that did not get killed, they went down south to Egypt to avoid the wrath of Nebuchadnezzar, because once that happened, the Nebuchadnezzar said, "That's it. All independence is lost now." And he went and left Eretz Israel vacant for the next 70 years. That was a conspiracy. And these things are constantly going on. And this is one that was ignored, that actually ended up resulting in a terrible tragedy and a real problem for the Jewish people for the next 70 years. Okay. Dealing with conspiracies. So that's the real issue. That they exist, without question. That they're ongoing the entire time, for sure. The more you take God out of society, like we spoke about last week, the more society becomes secularized to the point that people don't really either believe in absolute morality or at least live by it, then what are you left with? We said there were three things you needed to be able to know truth and live by truth. Number one, you have to believe in God. You don't believe in God, there's no absolute truth. There's no absolute truth, then it's only a matter of opinion. My opinion versus Hitler's opinion, or Mussolini's opinion, or this person's opinion, because it's all opinions. And I may not like your opinion. Your opinion may be dangerous and damaging to me, and I might be prepared to go to war against you to save myself, but it's still just an opinion. The only way you can have absolute truth is if you believe in God. That's number one. That's the precursor to this entire discussion about truth. Second of all, you have to believe that God shared that truth with us. It's one thing to believe that God is the truth and that he exists, but if you think he kept it all to himself up in Shemayim, so what good is that to us? We're still in the dark intellectually. And the third thing, which is very important, hugely important, and that is you have to understand there's a thing called the Yetzer Hara. You have to understand and believe that man has an evil inclination. It's not the essence of who he is. In a few weeks from now, God willing, I hope to do a webinar on reincarnation. And that was a plug. The first page of Shar HaGilgulim, Gate of Reincarnations, the classic work on this topic by the Arizal, is that man is not his Yetzer Hara. He's not the body. He's not his instinct. He's a soul. He's a soul. And the soul is completely good. It may have some damage to it. It may need to be fixed up. That's what we're here in the first place. But in essence, the soul is good. The body is instinctual, has a Yetzer Hara. If you don't believe in that, and your body is constantly involved in everyday life, you see with your eyes, you hear with your ears, you taste with your mouth, you smell with your nose, you touch with your hands. That's the world of the body, and it's all around us. People don't believe in the soul because you can't see. When you look in the mirror, you see the body. You see somebody else, you see a body. When they talk to you, you hear a body. It might be the soul inside there somewhere, if they're spiritual, but for the most part, the world is the world of the body, and the world is the world of the Yetzer Hara. And the Yetzer Hara is only interested in one thing and one thing only. Me. Number one. That's it. My survival. Even if I love somebody from a body's perspective, it's because I get the pleasure of that relationship. It's the soul that allows a person to go outside of their body and care about others and other issues in life that are not necessarily always to their benefit, but they are to the benefit of others. You need the soul for that. You need to believe is the Yetzer Hara to be able to fight against it, which Cain didn't do when he murdered his brother, and not conspire against other people. That's the bottom line. You need those three things. Belief in God. God communicated that truth, and we have the Yetzer Hara that tries to undermine that truth and tell us that we want things we don't really need, that might not be good for us. When I eat that extra course on Shabbos, and my stomach is telling me, no, according to Rambam, my friend, you're 2/3 full. Put the brakes on. And my eyes are going, but that looks delicious. And my palate's telling me it's going to taste delicious. And I go ahead and eat until I'm 6/4 full in the end, and sit there on the sofa after in pain and agony because I ate too much food. That's the Yetzer. Yetzer Tov doesn't do that. You don't overeat with the Yetzer Tov. You don't eat bad food with the Yetzer Tov. The Yetzer Tov is interested in connecting to God, which means doing godly things and living a godly life. So if you don't believe in the Yetzer Hara, and it's so prevalent, as the Rizal points out in Shar HaGilguli, it's like the guy who walks in, he just walks to the door, there's a meeting going on already, and people are delegating responsibility, but for some reason this guy believes he needs to be the center of the show, and he walks in, makes the most noise, and starts talking out and giving orders, and like, who are you? Where'd you come from? And that's Yetzer Hara. It came into the body as a result of the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and took over and became the balabayas, the homeowner of most people in the world. That's the world. And if you take society and you extract God from it, which has been going on for some time, but certainly was sped up during the Obama era, when they started to take God out of schools and out of the prayers out of the schools and out of public buildings and public areas, and basically get rid of him, push him to the back, or make him disappear altogether. What are you left with? Certainly, if God's not important, the truth's not important, the Yetzer Hara is running the show. Why don't you just stand back and look at Washington, look at London, look at Ottawa, look even Jerusalem over here. Look at the Knesset. Who's running the show? The Yetzer Hara. They're the balabati. Yeah. If enough people get together with a common cause, there's two expressions we see from the Chumash. One that's relevant to Shavuos coming up as Rosh Hashem. The Jewish people at Mount Sinai got to level Kishucha b'lev echad. When God spoke at Mount Sinai, big lightning coming down and thunder and smoke, like a Kish and Aish, like it was absolutely. You can't even begin to imagine. Hollywood, as much as it tries to duplicate it, it's just the movies. But see it in real life, especially for them, they came out of Mitzrayim and they already saw the 10 plagues and the splitting the sea, and yet what they saw at Mount Sinai was so overwhelming. They completely forgot about themselves and got to the level of Ke'ishecha b'levecha, like a single person with a single heart. Rashi said back by the sea, right, by the Yam Suf, that the Mitzrayim pursued the Jewish people at that time into the sea, b'levechad kishechad, the reverse. B'levechad kishechad, meaning what? with a single heart, like a single person. The Jewish people got to a single person with a single heart. The Mitzrayim were like with a single heart, like a single person. What's the difference? They sound kind of the same, but obviously there must be a difference, a significance in the languages we switched around. There's a very fundamental difference, and that is that, and you see it all the time in everyday life. People, parents, for example, might never talk to one another. Not that they don't like each other, but they have different lives. They're over there, they're over there. They might even live in the same block, but they barely say hello. When they pass each other, they wave maybe, but that's about the extent of it. All of a sudden, there's a crisis at the local school, and they both send their kids to the same school, and they call each other up and they say, "Did you hear about this?" Yeah, and they call other parents, and they have a community meeting to deal with the issue, and they're all working together, and they're all unified and delegating. It's wonderful to watch. The only problem is the moment that the problem is solved or unsolvable, they disband. They go back to the way that they were before. That's belev echad kish echad. The heart, the cause, has combined us, which is fine, right? But that's what made us unify. And if the cause is gone, it's the same thing like what it says in Pirkei Avos, that any love that depends upon some condition, the moment the condition is gone, the love disappears. But any love that's unconditional, it's not dependent upon a condition, that love will last forever. It's the same idea. That was the Mitzrayim. And that's most people. Causes bring us together, the cause is over, we disband. But at Mount Sinai, it wasn't the cause. There was no cause that brought us together. So then what unified us? The exposure to truth, to God. I could spend at least another half an hour trying to describe to you what that means in everyday terms. I wouldn't do it justice, but I can tell you as you sit there right now, what you're thinking, it's beyond your imagination. It's more awesome than anything you've ever seen in your entire life. It's more, fearful in a sense than anything that's ever scared you. And when these things happen to us, we forget about ourselves. You see a crisis, you run to the crisis. This coronavirus brought out so much chesed. I mean, but people, I'm in awe of what just the government has done for people and so quickly. But then organizations, what they've done for people, delivering meals and food and boxes of things and you name it. But where was all this before? Well, it wasn't necessary? Sure, a lot of it was necessary. A lot of organizations were trying to do this and struggling to get money for things like this. But the virus had this impact on us. The fact that we had to go to such extreme measures, it pulled us out of ourselves. It silenced the Yetzer Hara to a large degree. So your soul can come out. One day, God willing, we have a shir on Purim. That's what Purim's all about. That's exactly, Purim is the wine on Purim is to do exactly that, to neutralize the Yetzer Hara so that your soul can come out. But that's not what's going on in the world in general. In fact, I was amazed to see how, in spite of the catastrophe and the crisis, how much people still were out for selfish interests in politics and the government and doing nefarious things in spite of the situation. That's unfortunately, that's the reality. And it's not a question of is conspiracy a reality? Of course, it's going on the entire time. The question is how much. That's what we don't necessarily know. On the other hand, you can't address one side and not the other side. On the other hand, you have the conspiracy theorists and what's the source of their information. Some of it's factual, some of it's based upon things that they've read or learned or might know from the inside. But for the most part, they're their own sources of information. And it's very hard to determine unless you personally make a point of verifying or validating. And this goes on both sides of the line. Because you could have 5 government reports, but if there's an agenda, again, you could just go back in history. I mean, Russia tried to rewrite their history. The Nazis tried to rewrite their history. Before Josephus came along, that was the way governments worked. They wrote history as they saw it, as they wanted to appear to future generations. They were gods, and their societies were perfect, even though they were horrible. That's man. That's doesn't make it. Oh, but we're so much more civil today. Well, that's what they said about Germany before World War II, the most civilized population of all. And in fact, one of the reasons why, I remember reading, a lot of the professors in German universities and a lot of Jews at the beginning supported the Nazi party. And we hear that, what? Supported the Nazi party? The word Nazi has such a terrible connotation. How could they possibly, get involved like that? So the answer I read blew me away, threw me for a loop. Said because it first appeared to be a messianic party. It was going to solve Germany's problems and the world's problems. And we're looking, how could you possibly see in that it's like literally night and day, nightmare versus dream. But that's the way it appeared in the beginning. That's the way it was presented. That was a conspiracy. And they were the most civilized society at that time, apparently. And they've always been brilliant and smart. And yet they've been able to carry out the most horrible crimes against mankind. And not without philosophy. We're not talking about the Cossacks. We're not talking about Khmelnytsky, who was just a hater of Jews, who basically had no problem going and slaughtering them and doing terrible things to them because of hatred and power mongering. We're not talking about that. They had a philosophy. They had a worldview. It was constructed and very well worked out. Terribly wrong, but from a God perspective. From a human perspective, it's not much different than a lot of other societies. Just that it protected them and theirs protected, and that's why people go to war against each other. So that there are conspiracies all the time. That there are conspiracy theories, why not? That there are people who are against them, absolutely. But why are they against them? Where are they coming from? These are all questions and things we can't escape and get away from. But whether they play out or they don't play out, you have to know the Torah approach to all of this. And that is that it's really summed up by the following words, the following pasuk. We actually say it in davening every morning. You pay attention to the words and don't go too fast, right? Rabos machashavas belevish vatzas Hashem hisakum. Meaning basically that many are the thoughts in a man's heart, but it's the plan, it's the advice of God. That's what prevails. Look at Haman. Look at Achashverosh and Haman. They conspired. That was a conspiracy against the Jewish people. Mordechai had his own conspiracy for good. But they had their conspiracy, and it was all set up, and it should have worked. Genocide should have worked. It didn't work. In fact, one of the reasons why it didn't work was because Mordechai happened to be by the gate and happened to speak Tarshish, one of the 70 languages that people in the Sanhedrin had to know. And the two guards, by him didn't know he knew this. And they're talking freely in front of him, conspiring against Achashverosh. And he hears that, and he tells Esther. And Esther tells Achashverosh, and this gets checked out, and they kill him. Right? Big some sheriffs, they kill him in the end. And Mordechai becomes a hero later on when he reads all, the whole thing falls apart. We're all celebrating reading the Megillah. What a great story. But the reason why that plan failed, because many of them succeed and have. We don't have Megillahs about the ones that succeed. We once had Megillahs about those. There's Megillahs, on all the fast days. We lost some of these things. Megillahs Esther has survived, but many of these plans carry out, like what happened in Babylonia with Gedaliah. This was a very positive one, Baruch Hashem. That was a very negative one, and they're both because of God. They're both because it's God who decides even who's going to conspire. This is a concept in Kabbalah that's very important. It has to do with free will as well, but it's a discussion for another time. God has an agenda for creation. It's right there in the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint. That's the agenda. And it's going to get to where it has to go to no matter what. We can't always guarantee the results of our plans and our actions, but God, He's good at this. He plans, it's going to happen. That's just the way it's going to be. So there's different ways to carry it out. The nice way to carry it out would have been Adam says to the snake, "Oh, you're a tricky fellow," right? Or at least he tells Chava, "Don't listen to the snake." And here's what he's telling you. This is why it's wrong. And Chava, "Oh, wow, now I understand. The snake is bad news. Get out of here. Send him away." And then God says, "Good work." Shabbos comes in, and that's the Messianic era. Didn't happen. Act 2. Go into the world, try to get people to realize the reality of God. That didn't work. Avram came along, tried the same thing. That didn't work. God gave the Torah. We're supposed to fix the world. That didn't work. It's a work in progress until this very day. But it's going to happen. And one way or another, God's going to move history along. And if it takes a conspirator, he'll find the person. He'll find the people. As the Gemara says, the mean finds its mean. The kind finds its kind. Like a producer who wants to make a movie. And he's got a good guy and a bad guy. He's looking around. Who makes a good guy? Who makes a good bad guy? Oh, this guy's a good bad guy. Let's use it for a bad guy. Good. He looks like a bad guy. He's got that kind of a face, that personage of a bad guy. And he looks like a good guy. Or maybe we want a good guy who looks like a bad guy, and a bad guy, But either way, he chooses based upon the qualifications, based upon the resume. God works the same way. He finds people who've got the personality. You can see it's all, just look at the pictures. It's all over them. Their attitudes, the things they say. They're perfect for the job. But it's God who's controlling the show. That's what it says. A conspiracy cannot succeed no matter what if it doesn't have God's okay. If it fails, and we don't even know but half of them, we have Psukim and Tehillim even describe this reality, how God's constantly fighting on our behalf. We only know about the things he shows us, but there's all kinds of things being planned against the Jewish people that never get off the ground because God himself stops it before we even get involved. Others, we have to get involved. But it's God. He's the one. And the question, if a conspiracy succeeds, chas v'chalila, a negative one, a bad one, in any way, the question is not how they got away with it. The question is, why did God let them get away with it? Because really it's between me and God in the end. The conspirator and the conspiracy is just the means. It has no power. These people have no power at all whatsoever. They will have to answer to God in the end, while they were the ones he could choose. Why they were the ones he could choose to carry out the dastardly deeds. That's between them and God. But the conspiracy affects me in any way, that's between me and God. What did I do that took away my protection? Well, last week's Parsha. In Parsha Bechukosai, God lays down the general rule. We'll see it again in Parsha Kisavo before Rosh Hashanah. But he lays down the general rule. You want my protection. You want me to make sure. It's literally in Parshas Bahar, black and white. You do this. Let's talk about Shemitah, but Shemitah is really just the klal, for all the mitzvahs in Torah and a meaningful lifestyle, a godly lifestyle. God says you'll just dwell with security. You'll dwell with a sense of safety. The whole world might be chaotic around you, and there were times in history when this is exactly the case. It happened not too long ago, where you had the Arab Spring and all these countries, but Israel, Baruch Hashem, for the most part, was just going on, functioning. Even when the housing market fell out in 2008 in the States, for the most part, Israel, Baruch Hashem, was unaffected by that. And there's lots of times in history when that's the case. But God says, if you will do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to make sure that you're safe. In fact, we say in Shemona Esrei that we pray that Hashem will stop all the evil people, the Malshim and all the people who work against the Jewish people, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Gentile, doesn't make a difference. It's you. You're the one who protects. We can't really protect ourselves. We protect ourselves by doing the things you ask us to do and living the lifestyle you expect us to live. That's how we protect ourselves from all of this. And we end up the Shemona Esrei by saying that Shalom. He blesses the Jewish people with peace. Peace, that's one of his names, the Gemara says, is Shalom. And Shalom is something that comes from God. He gives it to a person. He gives it to a nation based upon their worthiness. So that's why we invoke We even say at the end of Shemona Esrei, Elokai Desor, the very last paragraph after the last bracha, we even say the words, regarding all those who plan against me, quickly cancel their plans and destroy their plots. That's what the words say. That's talking about conspiracy. But we're turning to God for this. I don't even know half the things going on. Mordechai didn't know everything. As much of a prophet as he may have been, there were things taking place outside of his understanding, his reach. But God handled all that because Mordechai was devoted to emes, to truth, to geula, to redemption, to the return of the Jewish people there to Israel, Binyan Beis HaMikdash, the building of the temple, the return of the divine presence to it. That was his reality. So God said, well, you can't get a better human partner than that. This is why I made creation for people like this. I'm on your side, Mordechai. I'll make it work for you. Moshe and Aaron, that Paro in his palace put lions and tigers. Now we're talking about, pit bulls and Rottweilers and all these other type of dogs. He used, probably those type of dogs too, but lions, hungry lions and hungry tigers, so that when Moshe and Aaron came in, they would eat them. They didn't touch them. They just walked right past them. Because God, of course, performed a miracle on behalf of Moshe and Aaron. So, for the rest of the world, who's not paying attention to the Torah, not looking to live that kind of a lifestyle, they might be decent people on whatever level they're trying to achieve it, but they're not living a Torah lifestyle. Maybe they don't even have to. But for the Jewish people, we have to, right? Again, right there in davening, it says the following words. It says, blessed is the man who trusts in God. Say that again. Blessed is the man who trusts in God, then God will be his security. You have to create the reality. Then it says, trust in God forever, for in God, right? God is the strength of the worlds. Those knowing your name will trust in you, and you will not forsake those who seek you, God. So ultimately speaking, whatever is going on with the rest of the world, as real as it might be for them, it's a test for us. It's God's way of saying to the Jew, where are you holding? Are you with me or them? What's real to you? What I plan, what they're planning. And here's the catch to the entire thing. This is perhaps one of the most important ones of all. That ultimately, the people do powerful things. A lot of leaders have done very powerful things and have hurt and affected a lot of people. We've seen it even in our own time. I mean, there's in the Holocaust, righteous people were killed right before our very eyes, the eyes of those people who were there. So they can have that power, so to speak. The question is, where do they get that power from? So I'm not going to go into the whole concept right now. People know more about it. I've written books about this idea before. It's a very important concept. And even the truth is, even in secular thinking, this concept has come up and has been brought up and explained as part of physics explanation for why the world responds to the things we think about. And the basic idea is that we empower, right? We empower evil. We give it the koyach in the end. It may be used against us, and maybe in the end we can't pull the plug on it. But the original power that it got was because we gave it that credibility. If it wasn't for us, it would never have that type of strength and wouldn't be that type of successful. So it says, we actually read in the Haftarah, Parshas Bechukosai last week, it says, God says, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from God. Blessed is the man who trusts in God, God shall be his trust. So there's a concept in Kabbalah that if we, and in fact, the Chavos Lavavos even talks about this, the gate of trust, that if we decide to be afraid of the wrong things, then God will say, well, if that's what you're going to fear, that's what you're going to have to deal with. If you're going to tell me, not out of naivety, not out of a desire not to pay attention to reality, and just go back and have a fun time, but because you're saying that, listen, I want to live with the reality that God runs the world, that he's the one who empowers people to do things, whatever the results might be. That's where I want to, that's my worldview. That's my way of thinking. So that's good. That's exactly how to pass the test. This was the test. That's how you pass it. And you'll have my protection. So you're going to hear a lot of things over the next little while. Been going on for thousands of years. The results yet to be seen. We don't know where things are going from this point, and you're going to hear conspiracy theories going on and the counter-conspiracy theories, and you're going to hear about the lying and the corruption, and you're going to hear about the power of individuals and how they abused it, and a big, huge, chaotic balagan. You're going to hear about all of that, and it's going to knock at the door, and it's going to shake us up and scare us. But we have to go back to this psukim, right in Davni, right in the Siddur. Just go back, read them, memorize them, learn them, make them the way you look at the world. And you do that, you have the koyach, you have the ability to rise above the things that affect everybody else negatively. And that's our job. That's our test. We should be blessed to be able to integrate these ideas and take them to heart, to always be God's special people and to warrant his protection, to live with security and safety, B'ezras Hashem, and together with the rest of the world, usher in the Messianic year.
Amen. Rabbi, can we ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, one person was just wondering, as you were stating, that nothing happens without Hashem's knowledge, permission, approval, including all conspiracy theories. And it was brought up, what about the Shoah, the Holocaust? Was that not a conspiracy also, or did you mention that? And how we all want to know, you can't answer this on one foot, but the fact that how could that be sanctioned by Hashem? Something like that, something like any tragedy that befalls the Jewish people.
Well, the truth is, like last week's Parsha alone and Parsha Kisavu, tell us this can happen in history. It can happen in history. What is the reason for it? Well, the Torah gives very, very specific reasons. There's really no technical. The question is not that, because if the Torah never mentioned it, only problem is good, then we'd have that question. But the question is not the way it's being phrased, because the Torah itself speaks about it. The question that's bothering us really is the generation that went through it. What did they do? What did they do differently? The generation before them didn't do, that they didn't have the Holocaust, or that one, or the one after that. What was unique and special about these particular people? They suffered so. That's a question, right? Because the Torah speaks in Parshat B'chukosai and tells us, but we don't know what they did that was so bad, because the Torah says, but other people did the same bad things. So it's a cumulative. So if it's a cumulative, then my ancestors who were doing the same bad thing, and I just happen to be the unlucky guy who got caught in the generation that got punished for it, that's fair? So that question I can't answer, because those are God's cheshbonos. Those are his calculations. I have no idea. 1 million children died. You want to hear my guesses? You want to hear, from Sharha Gilgulim, why that type of thing might possibly happen? I can give you that. But to say that's the reason why, no way, no how. Because we have to understand and appreciate one very important rule when it comes to all of this. And that is that as much as God has shared his wisdom with us, for which we have to be eternally grateful, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Just open up Eitz Chaim of the Arizal and see what Kabbalah says about creation. And that's not even a fraction. It's only a fraction of the story. So we have to understand and appreciate, it's very important, that there's so much going on when it comes to how God runs his world. That it makes sense to us most of the time, that's a gift, that's wonderful. But it gets to a point where it doesn't make sense anymore. So then we have to understand there's a lot more we're not tuned into. Maybe some of the most profound Kabbalists know a lot more than we do and can see more in that. The Rizal does speak about, for example, why the 10 martyrs had to die. Kabbalistically, why they had to die the way they died, and the whole story the way. So they do explain that. But in modern times, the Holocaust itself, we're going to have to wait and just trust in God. Right? But one thing we know for sure, and that is if we do tikkun, and we do fix things up, that we can hopefully ward off such things in the future, and that's important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't think there were any further questions, but Rabbi, thank you for always dedicating an hour or at least or more when you have preparation time also to your life and your busy schedule and your family. We really appreciate that on Thursday nights. We're going to hope to continue. And I wanted to mention again to people that Rabbi Winston has a plethora of amazing learning materials on his website, 36.org. I just finished a course that I had to catch up learning. I couldn't attend live, but it mindfulness, Torah, and redemption, which is amazing. Receive his Parsha HaShavua. You can get many, many books on deeper perceptions of the Torah, of the Geula, of Hagim, holidays. So just go to his website and just learn. You probably won't have enough time in the day to learn all that he's got out there for you. And Josh and I. Sorry?
How much do I owe you for the advertising?
No, you owe me nothing. You want to always go to Israel Torah YouTube channel. You want to subscribe and press the bell. It'll notify you of future live streams. You want to watch the Bring Them Home series, Geula. Josh has interviewed many, many people, prominent rabbis, rebbitzins, people who are encouraging you all in Chutz La'aretz to make Aliyah. We have Rabbi Winston there. We have Shoshi Nissenbaum. We have Rebbitzin Heller. We have all kinds of wonderful people for you to hear. I have many more that Josh can name. And we also want to encourage you to look at the Geula Project on Facebook. The Miriam Project, Geula Hour, that's my project. And also there's SoundCloud interviews, including Rabbi Winston's, about the Geula. So thank you for joining us. And don't forget to go to the Israel Torah channel. Happy Yom Yerushalayim and good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. And Josh, do you want to add anything else?
No, you did a great job,
Josh.
Judith and Rabbi Winston. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm not sure what our schedule is for next week, and I again apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties with the transition to the new platform. We hope to have it all set up by the next time, including a dedicated website which you will be able to go to. So those people that don't have or have difficulty getting to the Facebook or to the YouTube channel, they'll be able to go straight to the website and see it live, the webinar. So we again apologize for the difficulties, but that is all. All the beginnings are difficult, and this is no different than anything else. We're very, very fortunate to be alive in such amazing times. On Yom Yerushalayim, the 53rd year from the redemption, from the liberation of Jerusalem, and we only look forward to good things in the future.
Amen.
Rabbi, I just saw one more question that we probably don't have time for, but maybe you'll start off with it next time. It says, what does Rabbi Winston mean when he keeps referring to Mashiach coming? Is it imminent? So if you want to take a shot now, or you want to prepare that for next time?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But if anybody wants, I can send them something. So let them write you, and I'll send you material. Anybody wants that in material, they can get right to you. Okay, so.
And again, Rabbi Winston has a website, 36, spelled out 36.org, and you're able to go there and you're able to contact him. You're able to buy his books from there. So it's, that's the resource center for all of his wisdom.
And these books are available. You can buy a Kindle file on the spot from Amazon. Preparing for redemption, that would answer that question, and you can read it tonight while the rest of us sleep. Anyhow, good night. Thank you very much.
It's a win-win situation. All right, thank you, Rabbi. Have a Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Chag Sameach.
Good Shabbos, everybody. Okay, Josh, I'm going to sign off. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.